happening now. You're listening to the EdTech Situation Room for November the 16th, 2016. This is Wes Fryer joining from Oklahoma City, and Jason Neiffer is out and about on assignment, as he has been quite a bit. And so I am delighted to welcome Jen Carey, and I met Jen a couple years ago at the wonderful Miami Device Conference down in Florida. Jen, why don't you just tell everybody kind of what you do? And, in Oklahoma, we don't believe climate change is real. I kind of think people in Miami are not debating it like we are here.
That is true. It is a nonpartisan issue, especially as we're having king tide flooding right now.
What does that mean?
Yeah, about twice a year, we get really large tidal surges in Miami Beach. It gets a few feet of water. And it's a great way to ruin your landscaping because it's often salt water that comes right up.
Man.
Yeah, but I'm Jen Carey. I am the Director of Educational Technology at an independent school in Miami. It's called Ransom Everglades. We're about 113 years old this year.
Wow.
So I do a lot of work at my school helping teachers integrate technology effectively and meaningfully. And then on top of that, I do some work with ISTE and with Atlas, just focused on helping not only educators, but tech leaders be more effective at integrating technology and bringing tech out of the kind of siloed outside of the school and bringing them inside the school is really part of the heart of any school's curriculum and any school's mission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we may want to talk more about Atlas too, because I am really close to wanting to come this year. It doesn't look like I'm going to make it to ISTE. And so, yeah, we can talk a little bit more about this. We want to tell everybody listening that you can access our show notes at edtechsr.com/links. And I'm sure there'll be a few things that are not even in the show notes yet that we'll end up putting in. But our goal is to have those links there to refer to. And we do have at the top, actually, I don't think I put it, I'll add it. We have a survey. So we have folks that are listening. We know there's folks downloading. And so if you want to take our listener survey, you can go to wfryer.me/edtechsr in order to fill that out. Jen, since I don't even really know a little bit too, how did you become a tech director? What is your educational background?
Oh my gosh. So my graduate degree is in classical archaeology, which, as you know, feeds quite nicely into EdTech.
Absolutely.
I like to tell people, well, there's two different veins to this. So I'm history, anthropology, and archaeology is my background. Archaeologists are the most techie of the soft sciences. So we used to have to get permission before the days of Google Earth. We used to have to write to the federal government and pay a fortune to get satellite images that were no longer classified, which usually meant they were anywhere from 30 to 50 years old, depending on where you were working. I remember having a very expensive digital camera in the 90s that did about 1 megapixel, I think, and it was several $1,000s. Building my own digital databases and that could run statistical analyses and things like that. So archaeologists are surprisingly techie. I also largely grew up in the Bay Area. So we had an Apple IIe in 1982.
Wow.
So I grew up with a computer, and I grew up with even access to the internet back in the olden days where you could surf the entire web in about 2 hours because there were, 150 sites?
And it was before Netscape, so you were on the Lynx browser and everything loaded really fast on your dial-up modem. Yeah, and nothing had names. Everything was numbers. And so I really grew up being, one, very techie and surrounded by tech, and then got into a profession that was very tech-oriented. And then it became really evident that there aren't a lot of jobs anymore for tenure-track professors, and I really love teaching more than anything else. And so I started working in higher ed, and then moved over to independent schools and became the person where the iPad came out and they went, what are we going to do with this? Let's give it to Jennifer and figure out what she does with it. And kind of went from there to be working up and becoming a tech director. As you know, our field's a little wonky. People end up in it from all over, and it's fairly young in this really educational integration role. Well, and it's awesome to have diverse, backgrounds and perspectives. I think, in some schools still, we have the folks that kind of grew up with the tech, who are the boxes and wires people that used to crimp, Ethernet cords and really just sort of do the care and feeding of the boxes in the closets. And now, with there's so much importance of integrating the technology and working with teachers and having I think, of vision for how these things get used. It's so important to. We have all kinds of folks who are in tech and who are tech directors, but I think I'm invigorated by those that have an instructional focus, and it's great. It's we have a new member of our staff who's working on our admissions team who actually has an archaeological background as well. She had lived in Bolivia with her husband, and I was fascinated by that. And then you have a connection to Eric Ebert, right?
Yes.
And that was that through some summer institutes, or how? Because Eric Ebert, and I'm the director of technology at Cassidy School here in Oklahoma City. Eric is our upper division computer science teacher who's starting to get our program going. It's been a number of years since we've had upper division computer science classes. So how did you connect with him?
I worked with him through Johns Hopkins CTY program. I was an academic dean for them, and I actually supervised Eric. And he gave me the best compliment I'd ever gotten as an administrator, which sounded initially, you're like, what? It said, Jen Carey is a pit bull. She's loving, loyal, and she will keep you safe. And I just I was so enamored by that. And he's such a great guy. And I remember talking, he also made a transition from higher ed to teaching K-12. And I knew he would be just a perfect fit for it.
And Johns Hopkins, I know he did stuff with cryptography.
Yeah.
What was that? What is that summer program?
So it's a Johns Hopkins CTY program. It's for, you may be familiar with Duke has a similar program called Duke Tips.
Yes, our daughters just applied for that this summer.
Yeah, so it's a summer program for gifted children. It's residential. I think the Duke is 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
I'm not sure. We haven't participated yet.
Okay, so the Hopkins program, it has 2 sessions that are 3 weeks each. It has a really robust scholarship program, so they do a really good job with outreach and just phenomenal. And really what I think, the academic part is important, but these kids tend to be highly gifted, and they run the gamut from kids who are gifted and also a star athlete and very popular, to kids who are highly gifted, perhaps with some learning differences, maybe on the spectrum, or kids who just have some social problems. And they come to a program where everybody's gifted. For the first time, they may not even be the smartest kid in their class. They're challenged in new and interesting ways. And a lot of times they feel like they can be themselves. They can be smart. They can be, and people appreciate and respect them for that. And it's just a phenomenal program. And then the educators we bring in they're great. I had to leave the program when I became an administrator because I no longer had the 7 weeks in the summer to commit to it.
Right.
Which it was bittersweet because I was excited about the new job position, but I was really, really disappointed about having to leave Hopkins because it was just such a fulfilling experience.
Well, awesome. That's awesome. Well, so normally on the show, we'll take some different articles and kind of look through them through an EdTech lens, an educational lens. I know that you want to talk a little bit about fake news and fact checking, which sounds great, but I think I'm gonna take us first to surveillance and security, just sort of selfishly, because this Saturday, if anybody happens to want to go, although I'm sure I think that the room, it seats 100. Our youngest daughter and I are going to go do some TEDx talks up in Enid, Oklahoma. And Rachel is 7th grade. She's going to talk about tales from a teenage Minecraft YouTuber. And she's been
I love your daughter already.
Yeah, about 2 years. And it's been a very interesting journey for her and for me. And then I'm going to do one on digital citizenship in the surveillance state.
Oh, that's a good one.
So a couple articles that I put into the show notes, and then I just wanted to kind of get, just selfishly, your take maybe on how do conversations about surveillance whether it's government, corporate, or individual, fit into what we should be doing with digital citizenship in our schools. And so there's a Forbes article from November 3rd called "This Hack Can Silently Break into 1 Billion Android App Accounts." And
whoa. Sorry, there's an ad playing music.
Oh my gosh, you just really startled me. Talk about hacks.
I think it was Forbes. I was just pulling it up.
Yeah, there you go. So websites that just play their music and don't even
I really hate that too.
Ask your permission. So, being a tech director, I joked with our assistant tech director that I'm sort of feeling like I'm fitting in, or that I'm really taking on this hat, because I mean, a week or so ago, I watched sort of for fun a Cisco, security whole webinar, just like in the evening, and I was like, okay, I think I'm changing a little bit, but I do listen to lots of podcasts. The Security Now podcast, which is a Steve Gibson, Leo Laporte Twit network, has been one that I've listened to for years. And they were talking about OAuth, which is a authentication scheme that probably all of us have used, where instead of having your own username and password for an account, you can click a button and log in with Google or log in with Facebook. Mm-hmm. And so that particular authentication method was studied by some academic researchers, and while they found it's a little convoluted and it can be secured, one of the biggest problems was that it's implemented or poorly implemented by a lot of developers, and so it opens up a lot of security holes. So that was interesting, because we are trying to move towards single sign-on, and not yet. Other than knowing we want to move, use our Google accounts, we're just at the point at school actually of getting our Active Directory cleaned up and setting up our Active Directory sync, so that those are going to be one, and we're not going to have people keep track of two separate passwords theoretically.
Right, it's such a hassle.
Yeah, and so the other article was that Facebook blocked Admiral from using profiles to price car insurance, and basically caught wind of this, that they were going to, ask you to opt in, but they were going to scan your profile and judge, to what degree are you a risk and a higher liability in terms of charging you insurance. And this is, some of the fears that people have about the surveillance state, on a corporate level, certainly, that insurance companies are going to, take a look at everything that we share, and maybe even things that you don't realize that you're giving away, and then make decisions about what you qualify for, maybe for health insurance or things like that. So what is your take on surveillance and security? And if you were giving a TEDx talk about digital citizenship and surveillance, what would you say?
I mean, so actually, this is a big pet project of mine. And as you were talking, I was trying to find a couple of websites that, of course, I blanked on the name of now that we're on the air, but I will add them to the show notes afterwards. I've been working on this a little bit with some folks out of Common Sense Media, and in fact, Atlas, we did a webinar on it with the Berkman Klein people out of Harvard, because privacy is actually a bigger deal than I think any of us realize, especially with kids. And not a lot of people do a very good job at protecting privacy. And there are some federal laws that are in place about what you have to do to be compliant. You've probably heard of them, COPA, FERPA, those things. And there's some debate in the independent school world how much those relate to us, and probably more than we realize. And then I also think my perspective is there's a social justice element to it as well, because we are, without their consent or understanding, giving out student data or with their parents. So I think number one is educating kids and educating their parents. Some things are obvious, right? Like Facebook, like you put it on there, or at least most of it, you're aware that it's sharing, but other things are a little more nefarious, like all of your Google searches or catalog. So at Christmas time, when you're trying to find presents, you notice you start getting really relevant ads showing up. And that's because Google, like, people don't think, like, I do a Google search and that data is being collected. Or I send email, like my brother, my sister, and I will soon start emailing about what we're going to get our parents. And then we'll get ads related to that as well. So, all of this stuff is actually out there. And I think number one, as tech directors, we have to focus on educating ourselves. And number two, we have to focus on educating students. What of their information is being taken, and why it's important. Because when I talk to my students about it, sometimes, and I teach teenagers, so they're kind of like, I don't really care. I don't have anything that I care if anybody sees. And then you kind of pry a little deeper, like, okay, can I have your phone and scroll through all your photos? And they're like, well, no. Or can I read all of your emails going through this? And they go like, no, that's private. What do you think? What do you think I'm doing? And I go, I don't think you're doing anything, but this is what can happen. And I also don't like the idea of normalizing monetizing data, especially of young children. So if you have a small child right now, let's say you had a child in the last 5 years, like most soon-to-be moms or current moms, you probably are Googling information about pregnancy, about gender, about education, whatever, about being a child. That means Google could actually have information on your child before it's born, from the time you're taking photos and posting it online to when a school starts incorporating all this data. And so that's why I think it's important to educate parents about what they're doing as well. So I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole on this for a really long time.
Well, yeah, and I'm not averse to diving into it, because I'm, like I said, it's a little selfish, but I'm very curious. I had a chance to do a TEDx about family oral history a few years ago at OU,
right.
And it's cool. You know, it's really, and I don't know, I hadn't really planned for years, like, oh, I want to go on the record and do a TEDx, you know, about this. But we've been doing a lot of digital citizenship work at our school. We have a team task force. Our headmasters asked us to develop a 5-year strategic plan. We just had a mini conference on Tuesday morning where we brought together about 12 different folks from across our divisions, and had a chance to, have you seen Province Day School in Raleigh, North Carolina?
Oh, their framework? With Matt Scully.
Matt Scully. Oh, yeah. Susan Bearden actually tweeted that, and I found that. And Matt video conferenced in to us and talked for an hour and answered questions about what they've done and their whole journey. And so I think that the student privacy part that you're talking about is really important, and that is something to draw out. How do you respond to the statement or the position of someone who says, I'm not a criminal, I'm not a terrorist, so I don't care? What's your response to that?
I think we value privacy more than we think of. You know, so you may not, like, I'm certainly not saying, I'm not a big believer if you have nothing to hide, then it's okay for things to go through. There are still things that I like to be private. We've all have, you know, most of us have personal lives and maybe have gone through tragedies or struggles that we don't want broadcast to the world. And, you know, we don't want this information publicly shared. All the events that are coming to mind right now are a little nefarious with the big data breaches. But what if suddenly all of your emails were leaked and everyone could find out about a fight you were having with your spouse? Or
what if you work for the Democratic National Committee, for instance?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that, like, people are entitled to privacy. In fact, I believe it's a right that we have. And that doesn't, and children are entitled to privacy. It used to be our parents just embarrassed us when you brought somebody home and showed your naked baby photos to them there. Now think about if somebody can Google Wes Fryer and find all those photos posted out on the internet. Maybe you're the principal of a school or, you know, running a company. Everybody's entitled to a private life, especially, I would argue, especially if you're not doing anything wrong. And that's really what I think is very important.
Well, as we've looked at curricula from Common Sense and others that are talking about digital citizenship, obviously privacy features high in there, you know, what you're sharing, being aware of that, thinking about your digital footprint, not only not doing stupid things, but trying to do constructive and positive things publicly to, you know, take charge of that footprint. But I haven't seen a whole lot of talk about surveillance. And so I had a chance to see the Snowden movie with I guess both our girls and my wife. My son is off at college, so he didn't see it. But you know, the whole idea about, you know, is he, you know, traitor or patriot? I think I've finally come down to be able to say for sure that, you know, it's good that we can have the conversations and the knowledge that we are able to have because of his disclosures. And I think that
it's perhaps a little bit more challenging to try to grapple with what do we do about the governmental side of that than what we might think about the corporate. It's also really important to know what's going on with individuals. I had a chance this week to talk to one of our parents who does a big conference for single moms in the Oklahoma City area. And I had presented for them a couple of years ago. I think I did an oral history thing, but I said, I'm doing some stuff on surveillance and there's some real important things that if somebody's in a divorce or has a antagonistic significant other, that they can be, using these stalker tools that might be marketed as, track your children or whatever. But basically, if you click a link in an email, they can be surreptitiously activating your webcam. They can be turning on the microphone. They can be tracking your location. I mean, Comey, the FBI director, definitely made more headlines later in the election with things that he was saying about the Hillary Clinton email server. But, he said about a month or a month and a half ago, yes, put a cover over your webcam. This is something you should do. And this is the director of the FBI. So I don't know. I've been reading, I'm listening to Spam Nation, which is a really eye-opening book about pharma and about spam and about why we have so much phishing. It's by Brian Krebs, and Krebs is the security researcher who was actually one of the big targets of the cyber attack that happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. That was the big Internet of Things attack. I listened to Lights Out by Ted Koppel, which is it's like Y2K. You can get really paranoid with this stuff, being concerned about cyber attack and what happens if we lose power for a few months and it's like New Orleans and Katrina. So I think there's a line somewhere between being overly paranoid, but then also just being naively ignorant.
Right.
And I think that digital citizenship needs to include discussion about this, because I think there is important advocacy to be done, like what EFF is doing in terms of trying to advocate, for instance, for tools that are going to allow for, anonymous browsing. And if you look at living in Bahrain or Iran or, countries that are very tightly restricting freedom of expression, it's good for folks to be able to have non-trackable access to the internet. But I think that the government side of that it's just a little bit more slippery, because it seems like there's things I can concretely do about the corporate stuff. I could get off of Facebook. I've gone, the Note to Self podcast had a good episode about this experiment where there's a Google Chrome extension that'll give you more, quicker visibility into the kinds of things Facebook is tracking with you. And I cleaned up my profile, deleted a lot of things that I said I'd liked. And, and Google will let you do the same thing with history. But the government stuff is a little bit more challenging. It's like, besides be scared, what else are you supposed to do? And I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, because I think there's, on top of the awareness, I do think it's necessary for people to have a voice with the government about the rights of privacy of its citizens, especially children, who are. I think all of us are not as informed as we think we are about the data that we're giving out. Like, I'm a little bit more, just because I've been working in this arena for a little while. But for example, Miami's got a lot of traffic. I use a very popular mapping app called Waze. I'm also aware that by using Waze, I am allowing this app to track my movement the entire time it's on. So now it knows generally what time I leave, because it'll notify me, oh, you're supposed to be at this doctor's appointment and it's over here and you've got traffic, so you should leave at this time. But I made a conscious decision to sacrifice that element of privacy for these handy features to not be late and to navigate around things. But not a lot of people are aware of that, or what happens to that data, or how protected that data is. One of Atlas's works has actually been on having to do with cybersecurity, because we've learned the #1 target now of ransomware, which, where they lock down your systems, you have to pay them money to lighten up. #1 is hospitals, and we've had a few hospitals in Florida have hit. I'm sure there've been more hospitals hit than we realize, because I assume they try to keep it quiet. The number 2 target is schools. Because think about all the data schools have. They have students' names, they have addresses, social security numbers, health information. In some cases, they may have credit card numbers or banking account information. So there's a lot of data that we have to ask ourselves, do we need to collect this information? And if we collect it, then how do we safeguard it and protect it?
So I saw you drop a couple links into the chat. FERPA Sherpa.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So FERPA, the federal,
I know FERPA, but the FERPA Sherpa, I'm not familiar with.
It's just a way to help both adults navigate FERPA, like what the law is, what does it require, and as parents to help parents to be informed about what their schools should be doing so that they can, and I think schools and parents should work together. So in no way am I suggesting an antagonistic relationship. Schools, as we all know, are overwhelmed and understaffed. And so you can always, ask questions and maybe direct them to these links, because the language of these laws is, it's written by lawyers and it's obviously complicated. And so what I like is it's real language and an easy way for you to understand how your child's information should be protected through a school. And if they use, like we use Google Apps for Education, I think 80% of schools now are Google Suite, G Suite.
G Suite. That's right.
It's only been a week. I'm still working on it, and I have no idea what the new hashtag will be when I post things. Is it GS?
I'm still doing Google. I do Google EDU as the hashtag.
I always do GAFE.
Yeah, I've been going Google EDU. So
that's a good one. But then there are certain things they have to reveal to parents as well about what they're collecting and what your legal options are.
Okay.
And so it's a really good tool if you just want to learn more about the law. I also added the Common Sense Media Graphite privacy evaluations. And that is excellent. It's put out by Common Sense Media. They launched it last year at ISTE. And they went through a number of really popular tools at schools, and they've added more since I've been on there, and analyze how their effectiveness for safety, privacy, security, and compliance. And when it first came out, there was some, and I'm not going to call out any app on here, but there were a couple apps that shocked me that I really was surprised that they weren't as secure as I had thought they were. But what was really promising is that a number of these app developers reached out to Common Sense Media when it got published, and they made some changes, they made some updates, they had conversations. So I don't think most of these companies are being nefarious. I think they just don't know.
There's an education. And there was somebody that you were going to connect me with and did, I think, but I've just not followed up at Miami Device a couple of years ago to talk about those issues. So I'd still like to make that connection, because it was somebody who was with a startup but has done tons of research about this.
Yes, her name is Anna Albier. There's two people I put you in touch with. She's with Drop for EDU. She's a phenomenal woman. She's a Latina, and she lives in Silicon Valley in San Francisco, and she runs a startup, and just a successful one. It's called Drop for EDU, and she did all of this since her product is geared to elementary school children in California, which has the most restrictive laws. She hired an attorney. She did all of this stuff, and so she and her organization have done a lot of work with that. And then the other one is Bill Fitzgerald. And he works with Common Sense Media. He does almost all of their privacy stuff, and he is phenomenal.
This is the Bill up in Oregon, up in Portland?
Yeah, up in Portland. He's by
One and only, yeah. Funny Monkey, that's right.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Awesome.
And he knows, every time I think like I've got this privacy stuff down, Bill is quick to point out, like in a very nice and kind and thoughtful way, like, oh, but did you think about this? And then I'm like, oh, no, I didn't think about that, because it's an overwhelming topic.
It is. It is. Well, hey, I want to give a shout out to our 2 live viewers. So yes, Peggy George is there, and Jamie Camp is as well. So there is a pop-out chat from the public YouTube page. It's a little bit tricky. It'll challenge you to want to have multiple screens. As if we need more encouragement for that, because anyway, you can pop it out from the upper right corner of the YouTube live. But yeah, Peggy and Jamie, it's great to have you with us, and let us know if you all have any questions, and we'll try to give some voice to any input or thoughts that you all have. So any more advice that you have for me about just this idea of surveillance and digital citizenship before we jump on to another topic?
I think the number one thing is just be educated and realize that your data is probably more valuable than you think it is. And your child's data, I like to think of it, I mean, you are the guardian of your child. You have a young daughter, you know, she's her own person, you're responsible for her. But try to think of what she would want as her best interest when she becomes an adult. So while her baby pictures are probably super cute and adorable, it may not be something she wants pulled up on a Google search when she's 20. Or, you know, registering her for a contest might start giving out this data fairly early that makes her identifiable and trackable. Let's not even say for nefarious reasons, just for monetizing reasons. And then the government surveillance, I saw the Snowden documentary, not the new film. And you can certainly go get quite paranoid looking at that. But I mean, your data can be weaponized in easy ways. And
that's a powerful statement. That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, but it's
Can you elaborate on that? What is your data can be weaponized mean to you?
If you want to attain a position of power or authority, run for office, have a state appointed position, you know, become an ambassador, become a high ranking position at a company that makes a lot of money, information about you can be taken and turned against you. So think about the errant tweet that we've all heard of that goes viral and somebody loses their job. Think of that times a million. Somebody could lift a sentence or two out of context. Like, I can be very sarcastic, and if I'm texting my boyfriend, he knows when I'm being sarcastic. However, if you read that out of context, you might think Jennifer is a terrible human being. Certainly not somebody who should be a judge in this county.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by your data can be weaponized. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as, you know, we value our freedoms and and that's again why I think privacy is important.
Well, I may quote you on that and give shout out attribution to you for that statement. I'll give a shout out, and I've said this in the show before. There's a really, really good article called "If You're Not Paranoid, You're Crazy."
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find the source of that. It's in our show notes as you scroll back. I'm not finding it right now, but yeah, it's I don't know anybody who can claim to have the absolute, you know, here's the perspective everybody needs and here's what everybody needs to do. There's a lot of things that are hidden and cloaked in all of this, but we are rapidly moving, you know, into a society and a future where the cyber elements are going to be larger, you know, in our lives. And so I think we're well advised to pay attention to this and to wrestle with the questions. And like you said, to seek to be better educated. So do you want to take us to another article? Anything else that you've put into the show notes or not that you'd like to talk about tonight? Well,
I mean, the big thing that's been on the news, and so much so I wrote an article about it. Apparently we had a presidential election if you were living in a cave for the last 3 years.
Well, I heard a rumor about that, yeah.
It's been especially, you know, I'm not going to totally reveal my age, but it's not my first presidential election by any means. But it's been exceptionally volatile. And if you've been on social media, you're fully aware of how ugly it has been. And one of the things I noticed during the election cycle was the amount of fake news that got posted. And it was like shocking. And I was kind of being snarky about it with some people. Like, I would just fact check it. I would just post a link that showed it was wrong. But then I realized it was a lot. And then I noticed after the election, people like the New York Times published an article on it, that there actually is a large amount of fake news going out. Some of it's really obvious, or I think obviously fake, when they post something like, well, I can't really actually repeat some of the titles because they're so horrific. But one of the recent examples was that Denzel Washington endorsed Donald Trump. He did not endorse Donald Trump. but it was shared around, it went viral, and people picked that up. There were several other stories. I think there was another false story that Vice President-elect Pence made a really vulgar statement about First Lady Michelle Obama that was also completely untrue. And so I wrote an article to help people decipher fake news, and I happened to schedule it when everyone else wrote articles about deciphering fake news. And I think it's just a really good time. I've always been pushing digital literacy, and I think some teachers get around it by saying like, well, we just don't let kids use the internet for research. And as we all know, everyone, including teachers, uses the internet for research. And so it's more important than ever that people know how to decipher fake news. And so just kind of common sense stuff about, you know, validating your sources. If it sounds outrageous, it probably is outrageous. Do they link to supporting data? Google and Facebook have since, and I think I posted the article. If I haven't, I'll do it soon. Google and Facebook have since vowed to combat it. Like, they're not going to allow these companies to buy ad space anymore, which they were allowing them to do. They were giving them the valuable blue check mark that I've been trying to get unsuccessfully on Twitter. That gives them an air of, oh no, I just got cut off. Let me see. Oh, did I get cut off? Or did Wes get cut off? I'm going to send Wes a Twitter message because I don't know if I am going live. It looks like I am going live. Perhaps it was our discussion on surveillance. Looks like you got knocked off. I'm just going to keep talking a little bit about the Google and Facebook story. So Google and Facebook both allowed companies to monetize these stories. Google with AdSense, and Facebook was used to feed that back to it. And debate about whether it swayed the election is a whole other discussion, but the need for people to become educated about online news, I think, is really important, especially as more and more people, according to Pew, are using the internet, using tools like Facebook and Twitter and Reddit to access content. Let's see. Wonder if Wes just knocked out his internet access. Oh, he's on here. Oh, there you are.
Oh my God.
I just kept going, and then, oh no, you got knocked off again. I can't carry the show on my own. It's the first time I've been on here. Maybe this is my moment. Fake news, privacy, how to be digital literate. Wes wrote an article about that. We both posted our articles. His beat me. Strategies for fact-checking online, which is, by the way, an excellent article. It's much more. There you are. I was talking about your article. You keep going out.
Thank you for continuing the show. Well, so when hopefully he'll be back. I was literally yelling up, stop streaming, because I had neglected to ask my daughter to not stream, and we don't have a good, the new Google router is supposed to let you do some quality of service and restrict who's doing what.
I was nervous. It was our discussion on surveillance. So.
Right, I know. We can be paranoid. Sure. I don't think so. I don't think that many people are listening yet. But honestly, it is a little concerning that if you're going to, well, look at the alt-right, you know, what's just happened with Twitter as far as cutting out some accounts, very noted journalists that had just horrifically ugly things, you know, posted and said, like you phrased it, their information was weaponized. terrible things, you know, pictures of spouses and children, just photoshopped in terrible ways, things that you don't even want to think about, is that you probably can't unsee. Terrible, terrible things. So
I'm getting more and more concerned about the surveillance discussion. But I do know that he's talking about the fact that Twitter and other social media accounts are banned in China or in Saudi Arabia or Syria or other regions, especially regions that are more of a police state, or that have, you know, it's no coincidence that social media was involved in the Arab Spring.
All right. So anyway, we'll try to reinsert that. So ugly politics, lots of fake news being shared.
Yeah.
You inserted yourself in trying to kind of correct people. And I sometimes do that too, just Snopes. In fact, I put an article in the show notes that was, I shared it on September 28th on strategies for online fact checking.
Which is great.
It was one of my favorite teachers in high school, and she'd shared on Facebook this article about a pumpkin, or a gourd or pumpkin, you know, thousands of years old, and Native Americans. But a very quick Google search, you know, brought up articles that pointed out what was not true about it. The unique thing there was Facebook played a role, because below that article, it actually showed some fact-checking, you know, articles related to it, and that was one of the things that caught my attention. I don't know. Sometimes it can feel like you're, definitely swimming against the current when you try to point out Snopes and these other fact-checking things. But everybody's a publisher now, right? But people don't necessarily think about, wait a minute, before I like this, share this, that I have a responsibility to see if it's actually true.
And one of my big critiques and one of my concerns with Twitter is I think people share headlines instead of articles.
Yes. There was a really good article about that I read today that said that we're skimming the news, and we're less informed now because we're skimming the news and we're not actually reading. So their solution, or at least a way to address it, was please read the article first before you share it.
Well, one of my big suggestions was use readily access on a regular basis a lot of different types of news sources. So you could read NPR, the Washington Post, the New York Times. You know, you can get it from left and right. You can do Fox News and MSNBC, but the more generally informed you are, the less likely you are to read something and think it's legitimate, especially if there are so many that I think are just so outrageous, I'm shocked that people share them. But then there are some that are a little nefarious, and and if you have your own intrinsic biases that you think, oh yeah, that sounds like it could be legit. Like I read that dark chocolate was just as effective as an hour of exercise, and I was like, that seems legitimate. I'm just going to go with that. And just going to assume it's true. And please don't post a Snopes article contradicting that belief.
That's right.
So,
well, yeah, and that's certainly got to play into digital citizenship big time, and the whole question of authority and who do we believe. What are you all doing at your school with digital citizenship? Do you all have I would guess, do some common sense media stuff, but what does it look like at your school for digital citizenship?
So a lot of it is integrated into the curriculum itself, in terms of anytime there's something that requires research, we try to educate them on using online content effectively. And I've been able to convince people that social media itself is not actually bad for research. So I talk about crowdsourcing on Twitter, or the Arab Spring. You didn't know what was happening if you weren't reading Twitter or other sources like that. We do have a small, officially just labeled digital citizenship curriculum, and we talk about it in our in the 6th grade. We have a rotation there because we're a 6 to 12 school. And then we do some discussions we meet in our advisories every day. So sometimes we'll have a topic, and then I try to actively, I have my kids make a lot in class. We do a lot of digital artifact creation, and they'll make something like a video for me. And I'm like, oh, that was an amazing video. Did you put that on YouTube? And they were like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I should put it on there. And I said, well, if a college Googles you in 4 years, would you want them to find that? And they're like, yeah, I guess I would. I'm like, then why don't you put it out there? And just because I think kids get some conflicting message. They shouldn't put anything online, but they should. Yes. And they should, especially things that they're proud of or they did well on.
And that's something my wife and I have been talking a lot about. I want to write a book about is inside and outside sharing. We have so much fear in the school about outside sharing, and we tend to default to inside in the walled garden and almost robbing the interactive web of so much of its power for an audience that's beyond your walls and feedback and a lot of different things. And so I think that in the context of digital citizenship, we've done some surveys, and in addition to what we found with Matt's school, some schools situate this underneath global citizenship and preparing students to be, globally capable, globally aware, globally sensitive, to be global collaborators. And so I'm excited about how it might go in that direction, because I really think the best teachable moments for digital citizenship happen when we are acting as digital citizens, when we're sharing, when we're commenting, when we're, in a space, whether it's a sandbox behind a password inside the school or whether it's something outside. Those are usually the times when we get to really talk about this stuff, and it's meaningful because it's not the just in case, it's the just in time, or it's the situated conversation that has a meaningful context.
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. And it also should be age appropriate, right? So maybe kindergartners shouldn't be sharing things with their name on it. But as you get a little older, middle school or above is when you start thinking about what's appropriate to share out. And so, just like, allowing your child autonomy for what they watch on the television, or can they walk down the street by themselves? It all becomes, it's a decision that's age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. So you have 2 children. I'm one of 3.
Okay.
So some things were appropriate for me at 12 that weren't appropriate for my brother till he was like 27.
Right.
He was a little mature.
Yeah, we've actually got 3. We have our oldest is in college. We got to see him 2 weekends ago, and then we've got a junior and a 7th grader.
Oh yeah, then exactly. Like what was right for one of them at one age was not necessarily right for another at the same.
But it's also so interesting to see their different views on social media. I mean, before our son went to Berlin on a summer exchange where they were organizing with a Facebook group, and he basically had to join. He didn't want to join. He's on Twitter to read stuff, but he's still an egg, and we're just I would really like to help him craft a good digital footprint. When we went, he's at the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, and they had a really good handout at orientation about digital footprint and the way that internships and employers, are going to look at that kind of stuff. But and am I breaking up, or are we okay?
No, you're good.
Okay. So anyway, I'm helping him apply right now for a Department of Defense Smart Scholarship, which would be phenomenal if he would want it and get it. And he did his IB research, his extended essay in chemistry, basically on the chemical processes of hydraulic fracturing. And it's like pretty technical and awesome. And so I've encouraged him, since he got it back, like, publish that on your site. I mean, I know it was high school, but that's still really cool. And that really shows, the level of stuff that you were interested in and that you worked on. And so we'll see. I think he's going to go in that direction. But where he's been extremely reticent to move into the digital space, which is his choice, right? I mean, he is 18, and far be it from me as his parent to sort of like pushing him off the high dive, to say, you must, publish on Twitter. Our youngest especially, it has over 550 subscribers on our YouTube channel, is on Instagram and Twitter, has friends, around the world, did a giveaway for her 400 subscriber special where she did a drawing, and doggone it if it didn't cost $90 to send the package to Ireland, where this person was. Anyway, there's a whole lot of good stories and things that have happened, but it's it's not just a digital native myth. There's so much more complexity and variance to all of this. And our role as parents, I mean, it speaks to the importance of being connected and hearing what other people are doing and how are they handling things, and what do we need to be aware of and be talking about.
Right.
Honestly, I do, with her doing this TEDx, the number one thing I guess that I would fear is that, she could be targeted by malicious people, who would want to be very cruel. There's actually it's really nice for her to kind of fly under the horizon and not have mainstream media attention. And so I hope that by her sharing this, it's not going to be a negative. I hope it's going to be a positive. And I do have a lot of faith in the positive power of sharing, but that's also why this whole surveillance, conversation is challenging, because, it makes me question. Peggy asked in the chat, so if you're aware of this government surveillance and this stuff, what does it mean? What do you do besides be scared? And I think that it can mean curtailing what we share. Just like Jason and I think, talked last week about when I quit Foursquare, and that was a big deal, thinking about, okay, I'm not going to, be broadcasting to the world my location whenever I'm away from my house. That's probably not a safe thing, especially if criminals, as they are, getting smarter. So,
yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about Google extensions, because I went to a wonderful Google Summit last weekend in Mays, Kansas, which is a suburb of Wichita. But I noticed that, Jen, on your website, you are a level 2 certified educator. Do you want to speak a little bit to, as a tech director, I've wondered, should I go for innovative? I know I need to do Google certified admin, certified educator. What have you done, and how have you navigated how you wanted to spend some of your time with some of these new Google certification programs?
Yeah, so I had gone through the first iteration of Google Certified Educator back when I was a teacher, and I was not particularly impressed with it, because for everything that we teach about what education should be, that program actually wasn't it. It was all like rote memorization and looking things up and time testing, and it was silly. I went through the second round. One is my other certification had expired. I think they're good for 2 years. And so I was like, okay, I need to get Google Certified Educator again. But I also, when I was at ISTE, had spoken to Google, and they said, we redid the entire process. It's much more demonstrate your knowledge and your understanding. You're gonna love it. Try it again. So I did it for 2 reasons. One is just so that I can go through it and test my knowledge and kind of get that. But 2 is it something I want to press upon my teachers to use? Because we're a G Suite school.
There you go. Good job. You get a star for getting that right.
But we still use Exchange.
Oh.
And so next year, that's changing.
Yes.
And understandably, there's a lot of anxiety about what that means. And so one of my goals is to get a few teachers Google certified, so that I think it can help them just as educators, and as, in their classroom, feel more comfortable with their tools and maybe feel a little good about themselves, but also kind of selfishly, so that I can kind of push them out and hold them up as like, oh, you can go talk to Kate if you're confused about Gmail, or go talk to Gus if you don't understand how to use Calendar in this way. And I was really impressed, because they were right. It actually is involving, like, go into your Google Drive. It's a fake Google Drive, share this with these 2 people, give this person these rights. Oh, if you want your students to do this type of activity, what's the best tool to use? So I was actually pretty impressed with it this time around. So, and for you, like for me, I think I did it. They weren't particularly long. I didn't study for them. US can get through it, I'm sure, in a couple hours for both of them. The Google Certified Innovator, I just haven't found the time to apply for it, because that is a much more involved process. I know a couple of people who are, but it does require a lot more research. And I think you even have to submit a deadline by a particular time and attend their academy and all of that. So it's when you're going to have the support from your, and you also have to have some financial support from your school, unless you happen to live where they are offering it. But I will say that the Google extensions that he has curated are freaking awesome. I had not heard of a few of them, and I looked at them and they were amazing. Like G Suite training, if you've ever heard of Synergize, it used to cost money. They were purchased by Google, and now Google has rolled them out as free. It's great, live, constantly updated training for your organization. Every time there's an update to Google Drive, you don't have to learn how to do it. It'll do it for you. Save to Pocket, if you use Pocket to store any of your reading articles. This is a great way to like get that New York Times or that Washington Post article and read it on the go, or a blog post. Share to Classroom. Classroom now integrates with so much. If you have an assignment or reading assignment, you want to have it go back and put it in your classroom as an announcement or part of an assignment, it's really cool. I have to recommend it. Screencastify. This is awesome, especially if you have a Chromebook school. It's just an in-Chrome browser screencaster. So you can do screen recordings, whether you're on a Chromebook or, it's entirely free. So you can have your students just screencast from their browser window. So you can have them explain their thinking or talk about something that they were writing in class. It's a really, really cool tool. Something I'm asked a lot by people who are in Chromebook schools is how can I do screencasting or videos with my kids when we're on Chromebooks, and Screencastify is your answer. I think Honey is a shopping app, I want to say. Yep, automatically finds and applies various coupons. This is awesome. Anytime you go to a website, especially now that it's holiday season, it's a great way to save a few bucks. I know quite a few people who use Honey, and I know it's one of the more reliable ones because I use some other tools. Sometimes they're effective, sometimes less so. Oh yeah, and turn off the lights allows you to fade your screen to dark so that if you're watching videos, it's kind of like watching it in a dark room. You don't have the distraction of the screen behind you. It's pretty cool. There you are.
You are absolutely the best. I mean,
just kept going.
You would think I have never done one of these before. Wow, I am like looking like I don't know if my bandwidth is just at the absolute lowest.
Don't worry. In Miami, where it rains every day, when it rains, I lose my internet connection.
Well, I've honestly done tons of video conferencing, and I have a like $15,000 Tandberg sitting over here. I used to restart my router, before every call, and then just be religious about forcing everyone else to not touch the network. And anyway, I don't know what's up, but you are wonderful. So you talked about some extensions. Which ones?
Yeah, I talked about all the ones that I knew.
All right. Which ones did you not?
Is awesome. I haven't talked about I kind of touched on uBlock Origin.
Okay.
In a way that made it seem like very apparent. I wasn't familiar with uBlock Origin.
Well, I'll say this about Share to Classroom. So I guess it was announced at ISTE. I missed it and didn't know that, you can push that link to everybody in the room who has a Chromebook. So at our mini retreat with digital citizenship, we got the Chromebook card out, one of our 6 at the middle division, and did that. And I don't think people there were as impressed as they should have been, but I've told a few of our faculty and they're like, no way, because every day they're putting a link into their Google Classroom, they're asking their kids to log in and to go to it and click and take 4 steps, which can now happen immediately.
Yeah.
So the 2 that are my number ones there, uBlock Origin is the lightest weight memory-wise ad blocker that blocks ads on YouTube and just the regular web. And some of the ad blockers out there actually take quite a bit of memory. And so in that same spirit, the other one that I would say is put at the top of your list is Tab Suspender. Ben Wilkoff, who's out in Denver, Colorado, gave a great session at the InnoTech, the Colorado State Tech Google Summit. He gave a session summer before last and mentioned that. And oh my gosh, that saves me huge. It makes my machine so fast because I open up a lot of tabs. And if it's not active, it's going to be consuming system memory. So Tab Suspender, one thing to watch with it is that if you're, typing something in a form or whatever, you might lose it if you don't go back to it or something like that. So be aware of that if you're typing in a form.
I usually have like 18 tabs open, so I'm gonna.
Oh, it will change your life. I mean, those 2 seriously, those are my top ones. I use Extensify. Did I put that one on there? That one to turn them on and off. But any other ones you didn't touch on?
We did not touch on Crafty Cursor,
okay,
or Chrome Sign Builder, or Crafty Text.
So Crafty, these are all ones I learned about at the Google Summit. Crafty Cursor allows you to highlight your cursor when you're doing a screencast. So if you're doing like a Screencastify, then it'll give a big highlight, so you'll be able to draw attention to what you're doing. So that little black.
That is sweet because I've been doing that, but I've had to use it with Camtasia and add it in after the fact.
Yep, and now you can do that on a Chromebook or whatever, just inside the Chrome browser. Then Crafty Text is a pretty simple one, but it just, if I'm thinking right, it's the one that makes the text really large. So when you want to share a link with people and say, here's the, you know, the shortened link to my resources or whatever. I think that's what that one is. I guess I'll need to open it and see. Yeah, so you can just have it, you know, it'll be light text on a dark background that'll show up real well. Just blast a link, which is kind of cool. And then Chrome Sign Builder, we've just in the last year been rolling out digital signage. We got our campus. We have about 920 students. We've got about 20 something odd buildings and 80 acres. We have our upper division is really like a college. And so lots of different buildings where the students go back and forth. And so we've just this year for the first time have four digital signs out there. I've been amazed. Best Buy, 55-inch TVs, $380. Amazon, $15 mount, unless you need it to articulate, and then it adds about another $20. Our church has used a system called digitalsignage.com, which is marketed as free digital signage. Of course, you have to have a player. And so the players run about $165, but they're just an Android, HDMI, Android device, you know, player. And so it's very cool because you can manage it all on the web, and it doesn't cost us anything as far as hosting. We're not paying for any pro accounts. I think that's like $100 a month. But anyway, I'm interested, of course, in being fiscally responsible, and also we want this to look cool, right? And so Google has moved into this space, and this Chrome Sign Builder looks like a way to get your. I think you'd use a Chromecast, and then you'd be using that as digital signage. That would be a lot more affordable, you know, at what, $30 a pop. But I haven't played with that one yet, but probably need to.
That is awesome. Yeah, we the big snag we have with digital signage is we want to have it outside because we live in South Florida. We want everything outside, but due to our penchant for hurricanes, it's kind of difficult to be able to mount something outside and have it be compliant with code. Like we've got very, very lucky this year with Matthew. Very lucky. Had it been 40 miles west, it would have been a disaster. So, you know, it's just whether you guys get the same thing where you guys are with, you guys are in Tornado Alley, aren't you?
Oh gosh. And we have earthquakes too. We're driving back from Colorado, and we were literally a few miles from the epicenter where Cushing, Oklahoma is where almost all the oil pipelines of the country come together. And we just had it was initially they said 5.3, they downgraded it to 5.0, but we're talking serious earthquakes. And in fact, somebody was talking at lunch today. Our meteorology faculty member was saying, you know, even these 2.0 ones, these tremblers that keep on coming, we're looking at damage. So we have earthquakes, we have tornadoes. We're hosting an arts festival in April, the first week, and we have 3,000 students from around the Southwest coming.
Oh, wow.
Not a good week for a tornado. So we're calling on all our meteorology friends and those that are able to control the weather from afar. Of course, there's
I think that's still beyond our abilities. Maybe the next 20. I'll talk to my meteorologist friends down here.
The United Nations
currently crediting for keeping Matthew away.
That's right. The United Nations has passed resolutions prohibiting nations from using weather as a weapon of war. I don't know that means we have the capability to, you know, electromagnetically divert hurricanes and F5 tornadoes. I don't think we do.
I'd like to think we do.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Jen, thank you so much. We're going to do some Geeks of the Week and then kind of tell people where they can find us. But seriously, like I feel so bad. I'm like the guest who invites you and then, you know, makes you clean the dishes and, you know, mop the floor. So thank you.
No, not at all. This has been so much fun. I love geeking out with people.
And I'm glad to make the connection because I knew, I mean, I got to see your session. I think that was at the first Miami device. And then, like I said, I've been looking at Atlas and am very, very interested in coming, particularly since I won't be able to. Well, I may opt for Jackson Hole and an iPad Media Camp instead of ISTE this year. So,
yeah, ISTE. I mean, I'm definitely going to be back at ISTE this year, but yeah, you should definitely consider coming to Atlas.
It's in April in Los Angeles, right?
It is this year, and then next year it's going to be in back on the East Coast. We're finalizing a site. I'm like 99% sure we finalized it, but I don't want to say we're
Yeah. If you can ever bring it to Portland or Seattle, those are my favorite places to go. And I don't think ISTE's ever going back there, apparently. So
yeah, I don't think they can handle the size of ISTE. Yeah, those are some good ideas. I'll bring them up at our next board meeting. But no, we're doing some really great things and growing. We just did our big cybersecurity workshop that I chatted about briefly. And really the great thing about Atlas and how it nicely complements ISTE is ISTE is about teachers and Atlas is about tech leaders. And so anything from your EdTech directors to your webmasters and your the people who manage your databases to people who run the entire office. And we're offering some PD for anybody who's running an office of 10 to people who are an office of 1. And there's a lot of people who are an office of 1. So yeah, our conference is going to be in April, but even if you can't come to the conference, we have tons of other things, and I'll put that note in there.
Yeah, please put some links in the show notes. That'd be great. And
yeah, I do want to say that Atlas is geared towards independent schools, and so if you're in a public school, we may not be something that fits your needs, but I love talking to educators from everywhere, so I will talk to you about anything cool going on. Sure. I have lots of friends in the public school arena, and I went to public schools my whole life, so I have a great love for them.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's take things out with our Geeks of the Week, and then we'll tell people where they can find us online. What do you have for us this week as your Geek of the Week?
I just have one item, and it's really cool. It's Google's Photo Scan app, and it works on Android and iOS. And some of us still have a lot of print photos laying around, and maybe you want to send a good copy to somebody else, or you want to make sure they're safe in case you get hit by a hurricane or a tornado. And you can do high resolution scans of your print photos. And so this is a really great tool. On top of scanning them just to preserve them, you can also edit them. So I have a couple of old photos that I inherited when my grandmother passed away about 10 years ago. And I've been scanning them, and some of them have crinkles or tears, and I've been able to do some repairs. And this way I've been able to share them out with other family members because we only have one copy of this photo. So it's entirely free. And if you've got a bunch of great photos that you want to embarrass your children with, but you took them 20 years ago, I recommend it. It's really cool.
Awesome. That is great. And normally I think we're supposed to do one Geek of the Week, but whatever. It's a podcast. We can break the rules. I went ahead and put a link into a really, isn't this nice? Boy, my iPad just died.
It was your second show on surveillance, Wes.
I'm not going to go there. So thank goodness we've got multiple screens. See, you don't come to you don't come to a gunfight with only one gun. You don't come to the EdTech situation room with just one screen, baby. Okay, so while I try to pull this other one up, the first one is Mays, Kansas is like kind of a bedroom community for Wichita, Kansas, and it is a district that's really embraced Chromebooks and Google Apps, and so they have some really nice links to apps and websites that are usable on Chromebooks. So I dropped that link in. They have a little, I don't know if it's fancy HTML5 or what, but it's fancier than your typical thumbnail. So you can go ahead and check that out. Additionally, I put a link in there to recommended settings for Wi-Fi routers and access. See, I was being prescient, saying, Wes, you just don't know how to run a home network, do you? What are you thinking about being a tech director? But this is an Apple site. One thing I thought was interesting is they discouraged the hidden SSID on that, and I haven't thoroughly dug into it, but I am seriously considering. We've got the Apple. What is it called? Where it's got the time capsule, and trying to extend stuff. But Google, Jason is really even more of a Google fanboy than I am. Although I love both, Google and Apple. But they've come out with their new home router, and the technologies. Sometimes people think, hey, router's a router. Not only confirm or go out of date, and it could be hacked and become part of these Internet of Things, cyber attacks. it also just, can be using the older technologies and not be as flexible. So Google's router we had as the Geek of the Week a while back, and I'm really thinking about that. So anyway, there's some information from Apple. And the last thing is this Google Street View animator. And Scott McCloud had tweeted this a week or so ago, and I shared this at the Google Summit. Pretty cool. You just put in 2 locations, and it's a web page as well as an app, but it will basically create a driving tour of Google Street View images between those 2 spots. So when I was in Wichita, I put in like the zoo and then the high school, showed you where the Google driven taking their Street View pictures in between. So
this is so amazing.
And I guess that can tie to surveillance state because there's the Google car taking pictures.
Well, absolutely. And I just typed in both home and work addresses to animate my drive. So, dang, that is super cool. Oh, you're back.
Oh, come on. Let us close the show.
All right. So we tell people where they can find us. If people want to find me, I'm on Twitter at Teacher Jen Carey. And I have a blog, indianajen.com, like Indiana Jones, but I'm Jen. So indianajen.com or at Teacher Jen Carey. I just did my sign off, so why don't I will hand it over to you to finish.
There you go. Okay. Well, this is Wes Fryer, and I have been so thankful to be joined by Jen Carey tonight. You can find me on Twitter at WFryer. My blog is speedofcreativity.org. Usually, we are here at the EdTech Situation Room on Wednesday nights, and appreciate any feedback that you all have. You can find the show notes at edtechsr.com/links. And you can always follow us on Twitter at EdTechSR. So please check out the podcast and share it. And definitely check out Atlas. And okay, it must be time to end.
Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.